What's up, everybody? It's DH Thorne. So this is a little bit of a shorter video. I was writing a comment to someone about my latest video, Beyond the Goetia, and I was sort of going to thank them for enjoying the video and make some new points, and I decided I might as well make it into a short video. Over the next time period, I will be expanding on this as a series of videos. And the intention here is I recently, last night actually, just bought a book. It was rather expensive. It's an encyclopedia, of course, and it's called Gods and Goddesses, or let me see if I can find it, an Encyclopedia of Gods and Goddesses. And that's coming for me tomorrow, and it was actually rather expensive, and I managed to find a cheaper version of it. And what I'm going to use this for is it's really detailed. It's not just a list of names. Like, there's a couple of books out there that are kind of cheap that list out different demons and spirits, but it doesn't really go into much. It's just maybe a half sentence or two of each one, and this is going to be a little bit more in depth with a paragraph or two for each one, all the different pronunciations of their names, what cultures they came from, and so on. And that will really help me correlate different things between different spirits. So what I'm going to be using this for is part of this series, the Beyond the Goetia series, as we try to find evidence that can be used in, so it's not just unverified personal gnosis, but rather actual factual information that can be used to research these spirits if you wish. Keeping in mind, again, things that I've said many times, these spirits don't really want you to have a head full of ideas about them before you contact them. They really want to help you find the information on your own, and some of these videos may be part of that. But I don't like the idea, if you haven't worked with a spirit yet, you might want to try to temper your interest in researching them until you have gotten contact with them. Try to increase your information incrementally, because I feel this is important because two reasons. One, the spirit gets a chance to tell you what it wants you to know about it. And two, you're not confusing yourself. Actually, and there's a third reason, and that is to help you validate the things that you learn. It's a lot better when a spirit tells you things, you write it down, you take notes from what it's showing you in your visions, then you do research and you notice, XYZ matches up. That's always really, really wild, and a lot of fun. And it's more, it impacts you more. It has a bigger effect on your practice. So anyway, some of these are going to be easier than others. We already covered, Baal and Baal quite well, and there's others that are pretty easy as well that we can go through, I believe, and find correlations to other spirits. But that doesn't mean, and this is where the comment came in. It doesn't mean that they are the same spirit per se. I have a problem sometimes, even though I use the word spirits all the time, I kind of have a problem with the idea of individuated spirits in the sense that each one of these is such an individuated entity that it's like completely different, like they're completely different entities. I don't, I see everything as a kind of archetypal, sentient archetypal energy, and each of the archetypes, that these entities represent are based on a similar or same archetypal pattern. So, for example, you have a healer, you have a warrior, you have this and the other thing. So these archetypal energies, one way or the other, either they merge together, different ones, or individually, they become sentient over millennia of human beings interacting with these ideas. They're like an egregore, and they maybe even predate humanity, or maybe they don't. It doesn't really matter. Either way, they become sentient, and in human experience take on forms of gods, demons, monsters, angels, whatever, and that is how we interact with these ideas, these energies. And they are self-aware, so it's not that they're not, but they wear these masks, and these masks are different for each culture, and there's a very good reason for it. And I want to illustrate this in two messages that I got. One was from Baal, and this was mentioned in my video about him. It says, he had said to me, "Some things are not to be known." And this means either the spirits or forces in the world, or both, do not want us to know the truth, and therefore it's hidden, and we may never be able to, discern it or pull it free from its, hiding places. Or it could mean also that just, the nature of time and space means that some things are just lost to history and we'll never get them back. And these spirits are not, as we'll say, they don't dwell on these ideas the way humans do. Some things are lost to history, and spirits just don't dwell on these things the way we do. They don't have physical bodies. They don't have the same kind of anchor that we do to the material ideas that they represent. So they can change their form at will. They can become male, female, they can become monsters, devils, whatever, so long as that energy has an outlet. And that's a key thing, and I'm going to come back to that. So I've actually been rebuked by Lucifer once because I was pestering him, asking him to tell me what other cultures, saw him as. What was he? And he kind of said to me something along the lines of, in no uncertain terms, that I shouldn't get lost in the weeds trying to make them all the same. That's kind of like something monotheistic religions do. He said basically, don't make us all the same. We represent ourselves to you in different ways for a reason. And that reason is quite interesting. It's first on face value, it's like, well, yeah, okay, I guess that's what they do. But here's why, okay? Every different culture has different ideals and different ways of seeing things. And maybe once upon a time, say in ancient Sumeria, all these, or maybe even before, maybe there's a culture way before that, maybe Atlantis or something. All of these entities were part of a unified, perhaps, pantheon or some other idea. It might not have been gods. They might have just been the aspect of war, the aspect of fertility, whatever. And then they personified these things and made egregores out of them. Over the eons, over the thousands of years in between, different cultures rose and fell, and as they split, just like languages split from one group to another, their idea of divinity changed, and their idea of gods morphed and changed to fit their life, their world. And so the spirits happily, more or less, became whatever personification that they needed to be for that culture to have an outlet for their energy. So one culture would see a god of war as, Ares or whatever. And so these cultures would maybe bicker about which one was which, My god of war is bigger than your god of war. Well, they're all the same god of war, and potentially. And of course, this creates a kind of schizophrenia in the human understanding of spirits. But at the same time, as humanity is evolving and working with these energies, they each needed their face for this energy to have an outlet. And so when one culture would conquer the other, the enemy's culture would be debased, and their gods would be demonized, and vice versa, and so on and so forth, over and over throughout history, to the point where almost like, it all gets mixed up to the point where you can't figure out who's who, what's what, and what they really mean anymore. So we have these, this book is 610 pages. That just gives you an idea of every god and goddess that was known in this encyclopedia. There might be some that are missing, but I have a feeling they got pretty much all of them. So 610 pages, and that's not 610 spirits, there's probably 10 or 20 per page. So there's a lot. And as I'm going to go through this, I'm sure I'm going to see a lot of spirits that represent the exact same things. So those might correlate, and they might represent the same archetypal energy form. They might be the same essence. The same essence, dominates both. And this goes back to elementalism. You have elemental spirits, and I believe that archetypal sentient energy is just another word for, perhaps, an elemental entity. And instead of just being fire, wind, whatever, it's human ideas that are elemental in nature. So as these cultures would mix and merge, they demonize one another, different spirits would be destroyed, rebuilt, remade, reformed, different personifications would be given. You'd have syncretization, where they would take different religions, would compare notes and basically say, oh, this god is just like this god, I guess they're the same thing, and they would merge them. And we see this in history many times. Well, the same thing happens for devils and demons. So it's rather interesting. We also find that when you have, a conquering whatever religion or culture or whatever, the winner rewrites history, and the spirits they demonized, their dark aspects of those gods gets magnified. So, that's often an explanation for what we see. But the spirits themselves don't really mind, and it goes back again to this idea that they need an outlet for the energy that they are. They don't care if humans see them as good, bad, or otherwise, so long as there's an outlet for that energy in the world. And this energy can have a yin and a yang nature. You can have a positive god of war and a negative god of war. You can have a god of war that is, just and defensive, and then you can have a god of war that is destructive and chaotic. So there's potential for dialectic differences here, and they can represent themselves in any number of masks that they need to. And this might sound like some of you might be hearing this and going, "Duh, I knew this already." But this is very important when we're talking about the Goetia, because the Goetia, what is it? It is a book of jinn, spirits, demons. Different cultures said different things. I think the original translation was jinn, but it doesn't matter. They're all talking about the same thing. The jinn, they called them the jinn that Solomon used to build the temple, and those jinn were old gods apparently, in some cases. So we also find that this kind of syncretization and this kind of, like when one culture kills the god of their enemy, culture, it leaves kind of like a hole in the astral, pantheon. It creates a kind of an empty space where the personification of a certain god was, and that vacuum requires the replacement of something else. So instead of that being a god, it becomes a demon, perhaps. So this god of war becomes the demon of war that the enemy used against us. The angels of our enemies become our avenging devils that come to kill us, when we defeat them. So, and in many ways, this is how monotheistic faiths sort of take over. They demonize all the gods, and in the vacuum that remains, their one true God moves in, and you have Yahweh, and that's how you get Christmas and Easter and all sort of bullshit where the Christians take over pagan traditions that were once beautiful and meaningful, and now they're just about, presents, trees, and eggs, and candy and shit. So this is very important. So it means we have to take our discoveries in stride, and it means that whatever I find in this, and I might write a book on this as well, this might be something that people would enjoy, is to, yes, a YouTube series, but at some point converting that into book form as well for people who want it in that form. I think I might do that and make it a simpler book. But as I do this, we have to take the discoveries in stride and not be too firm in our attempt to merge them all into what, as I said, is syncretism and other traditions, because it's actually important to the spirits that these faces remain as available as possible. They're here for a reason. Lucifer exists for a reason, even though he didn't exist prior to a certain year. Venus, Horus, all of these correlations to Lucifer that were said to be based on similar things, the morning star, the first star of morning, Venus, all these things that were said to be Lucifer in one tradition or another. There's a reason that this exists the way it does. These energies need us to see them as these individuated faces. So you might have one energy, like the cosmic rebel, the phoenix imagery of Lucifer and Horus and all of this stuff. This cosmic rebel that is always, resisting the tyrant, to be free and liberated, and will descend into the underworld and rise again. This archetype doesn't care which face you call upon, but it wants as many of them as available as possible, because each person will feel a connection, stylistically, if for no other reason, to one form or another. And this is a big breakthrough even just for my practice, but I think a lot of beginners will need this, because they might be thinking, well, I don't really believe in that pantheon. Are they real or are they not real? And why would it matter? So it's an interesting process that I'm going through, and I'm glad you guys are enjoying it, and there will be more videos on this as we go through. But hopefully this wasn't too wordy, and I hope you guys are enjoying the video, and I'll be back again real soon. Talk to you again. Show me your support by making sure to like and comment on this video. Subscribe and hit the bell for updates, and then, if you wish, share this video responsibly. If you want to support me further, or want to know more about my practice, or learn to master your own, consider purchasing my high-quality book, Become the Maelstrom. The link is in the description. If you need my help, or want to book my professional services, you can contact me directly on Facebook or go to FromTheAshesPublishing.com and look for my list of services under Magical Services. If you do not see a specific service or ritual that addresses your concern, contact me and I can tailor-make a custom ritual working just for you. The link for all this are in the description. Thank you, and mind the shadows.